So welcome to another video in the series of Dani Asks Questions. I think it's a little more exciting title than that, but Dani Szwarc is collecting information about IBMI and is excited about it and is wanting to learn from the masters and the champions. And today we have Paul Tuohy, a good friend of mine who's also, well, I was going to say master and a champion. Yes, he's a master and a champion and a very nice guy to boot. So Dani, meet Paul. Paul, meet Dani. Off you go.
Nice meeting you, Paul. Thank you so much, Trevor.
So nice meeting you too, Dani.
Thank you very much. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm coming from a completely different world. I mean, it's web development, but started working for Fresh and starting to get involved into the IBMI, or I don't know if getting involved, but basically getting involved in the idea of jumping into the platform. But I was researching, I was learning, and it's so big, so large that I didn't know where to start. That was the whole thing. So that's the reason why we started doing this with Trevor. Trevor is the one that had the idea for the interview, so here I am. And the point is that I started researching a little bit about you because I didn't understand exactly what to ask you. And then I realized that you do interviews yourself. So yes. Right away I became more stressed because I need to interview the interviewer.
Okay, well, I got to tell you, I'm really stressed at the moment, Daddy. I don't like sitting on this end of it. I'd sooner be
that makes me feel better. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna start with something I believe is something simple for you, but for me still something that in the discovery. So how would you describe what the IBMI platform is for people who don't know?
Ooh,
okay, let me go with another one.
Okay, if that's the easy question, I'm starting to worry about the hard ones. No, it's well, let's see. I mean, the core platform has been around for a long time. So what that means is that there are an incredible number of businesses that are running their core business on the platform. Now, to me, there are two components to this. One is that to have that sort of longevity in the industry means that there has to be something good about the platform. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it just goes away, it disappears. This hasn't disappeared. It's still there, it's still getting stronger. When you look at the range of industries that the platform crosses, it's pretty impressive. So, even though it's sort of a niche platform, the big thing about it is that it is also a core platform across multiple industries. So if you go from insurance to banking to pharmaceutical to manufacturing to casinos, and even though it's not talked about, even a drug cartel was running their business on the platform at one stage. But we don't talk about that. Okay. So, but it's, but yeah, it is that it is an important and relative platform to so many businesses throughout the world. And I think that's what's at the core of it to me.
Okay. And I guess, well, this is something that happened with the interview before with Trevor. I put the questions in a particular order, and one question was taking me to the other, but it didn't work that way because Trevor was making me jump. And I guess I'm saying this because I guess you just answer another question that I have, which is related to what kind of companies will benefit. And, sure. And I guess in part is, you just named the companies that are working with it, but any kind of company can benefit from running, from a server running on IBMI?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's I don't know. I mean, I always think this is probably a thing of scale and cost. So the scale thing is that, I mean, okay, if I'm a small, maybe 1 or 2 man company, well, then maybe then, you know, this isn't the platform for me. Maybe I can get away with running it on a PC or something like that. But if you look at it from the mid-size up, so from anything from a company of 4 or 5 people to a company of millions, I mean, it crosses it. So I mean, back in ye old good days, I mean, we used to talk about mid-range systems and mainframe systems, and they were 2 very distinct things. But if you look at it, maybe about every 6 months or so, when IBM bring out a new release of the platform, it'll be sort of the IBM I will jump over the mainframe in terms of size and capacity and transaction throughput, et cetera, and then 3 months later, the new mainframe comes out and it jumps to the maximum size. Yeah. So in terms of sort of going where there used to be just like we would live in that middle ground of medium-sized businesses, that's no longer the case. It's a thing that it crosses all sides. Now, when I talk to mainframe guys, they tell me, well, mainframes are coming down into your area as well. We deal with smaller things. So maybe it's just a thing that mid-range mainframe comparison has gone away. But in terms of like who benefits, everybody benefits.
Okay.
But I think it's a thing with this is, no, that's really it. Everybody benefits.
Okay. Okay. So for those, so let's say that we're talking about a larger company, not a 2-people company, but a larger company that can benefit. Why would they choose a power system running IBM I instead of a Windows server, for example?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I think that this is just one of straight economics. It's the cost. Okay. I mean, this is the cheapest. Now, the thing where everybody gets caught up on this always is the initial thing. They will only look at one part of the formula, and they will sort of go, so how much does it cost to buy this? Okay, and they look at the hardware, and they say, how much does it cost to buy the hardware? And if you were to just stop with that sentence, you'd sort of go, oh, well, IBM I is more expensive, so we're not going to buy that. If it's a thing, though, on the other hand, you sort of say, well, hang on a second, what comes with your IBM I? And you turn around and you say, well, you get the operating system, you get the database, you know, and actually that big component is the database.
Yeah.
And that. So, oh, and by the way, how much does it cost to run your system? And you look at the total cost of ownership. So you look at things like, well, I've got a complicated database. How many DBAs do I need to run that database? Well, on another platform, I'm looking at 4 or 5 DBAs. Now, on IBM I, we don't actually need DBAs. We do need database people. We need a database engineer. And actually, they probably need to put in maybe a day a week. So I'm looking at one person giving 1 day a week as opposed to 4 people. How many operations people do I need? Fewer people. Right? Okay, so then we start looking at things like the benefit of the system itself. So there are, and I think there are a couple of just the real highlights to me. I think for large companies, insurance companies, banks especially, is security. And this is one of the big things on the system. And now this isn't because of security tools or we have this virus package or whatever. It's the actual architecture of the platform itself means it's a secure system. So for example, we don't have assembler for the system. So in other words, the only way you can write like true like system level malware for the platform is you have to do it in the labs in Rochester. You have to be an IBMer to do it.
Okay.
Right? We don't have of ways of getting that true low-level hack in there. Now, I mean, of course, we can Trojan horse. We can do things like that with it, if the standard stuff and standard security applies. But that dependability and reliability. The other big thing is, as I mentioned, was the database. And the big thing about the database is it's an integrated database. It's part of the OS. Now, if you look at things that they're talking about on SQL Server and Oracle, they talk about it where they're progressing towards integration. And they keep saying, when our database is integrated, it'll be fantastic. And they're right, it will. We've had an integrated database since 1979. I've experienced it. It is fantastic. It will be great when they get there. At the moment, you want it, we have it. And so it's that total cost of ownership and what you get for it, you know, for the bang for buck. So, but I think if you spread that cost of ownership of saying, well, how much is it for the hardware? How much is it for the software? How much are the ongoing licenses? How many people do we need to run the platform? It's cheaper. It's cheaper than all the others.
Okay. So from that aspect, so let's say that we convince companies to the reason why IBMI or a power system and running IBMI on it is better than going now. If we need people working on it, we need, so let's say a new developer coming to the market. How do we convince a developer why the IBMI is a place to go? Or how can that person jump into the world, the IBMI world? I don't know if the question is clear.
Yeah, no, I think I understand it. So the, okay, so I think the first thing is that on IBMI, the IBMI market itself is kind of in a weird transition point at the moment in terms of people coming onto the platform. So, so there are two sort of, a few factors I think with this. The first one is that oh, well, maybe the thing is, so since you mentioned I do these interviews, okay, there are a couple of people I've interviewed in the past who are students, right, who have just sort of come out of college where they learned RPG and things like that. And one of the questions I asked them was, why did you want to be a programmer on IBMI? Yeah. Right, so and every time they answered it, they sort of, these were smart kids who researched it. And what they did was they said, well, that's where the money is. Yeah, I mean, and it literally was a thing of, they sort of said, well, if I'm looking for a job when I come out of college, this IBMI place as a programmer, as a developer, is a place where they're paying more money than other places, right? So now there are not that many jobs being advertised in it, but if I can get one of those, I actually get more money. Now they're just their initial thing. And you know, I mean, I think maybe for you it might be a bit closer because you're a lot younger than me. I can't remember back that far, but I do remember. I mean, even then, for me, the main appeal to me when I was looking for a job was, hey, how much money can I get? How much is somebody willing to pay me? I wasn't being a purist, going, well, you know, I'm only going to take a Java one. You know, because Java is the greatest language, or whatever. You know, pick a language. It wasn't that. It was just like I was looking for interesting work. Now, the other side is coming from the other side is that the platform itself, companies are now in the midst of this modernization process. So they have old applications and they're going, we got to get these up to speed. So suddenly they're looking for people. Now, the other sort of third part of that, the triangle coming in to me, is the move towards open source on the platform and all of these open source technologies that have been introduced. And I think really more to me, that's kind of the carrot to get young people in. So it doesn't become a thing of sort of going, well, if you want to come to this platform, well, what first thing you've got to do is forget all of that stuff you've just learned for the last 3 or 4 years in college, you know, because there's a whole bunch of new stuff that you have to learn instead, right? You know, about how our system works. It can be actually what we're looking for is, have you got skills with these open source technologies? Because we want to leverage those with our applications as part of our modernization process. Yeah. So I think it's those three things are kind of melding. But if I'm talking to young people and those, it's a strange thing, like the conference that I'm involved in, the RPG and DB2 Summit, which just ended last week. And we had 4 students from a college there. We had a kid who one of the attendees asked us, she had her 17-year-old kid who's interested in getting into IT. Could he come and attend one of the workshops? Right, so it's a thing for kids when they come in. You know, the first thing is that they're not terrified by the platform.
Yeah.
Because it is, as an architecture, it is very different from other platforms out there. So with that, and suddenly it's the appeal of going, well, hang on, there's work here. You know, there's a job and there's a career.
Yeah.
And it pays well when you're starting out, and it progresses well as you continue. You know, I mean,
Makes sense.
Yeah, you know, it's that thing. Like when you've got sort of like 10 years under your belt, you know, and you've done well in your career, then you start getting picky about what you want to do. But if we all remember, like when we're starting out, we don't know what the industry is.
Yeah.
You know, it's that great excitement of that you're starting out. So go for it, and the platform has a lot to offer. I mean,
Okay.
I think the better person to ask those is the kids coming out of college. You know, somebody who's made that jump. It's a little bit closer to them.
So I'm gonna have to interview someone they already interviewed, which is Liam Allen. Not a kid out of college, but he's closer to college than I am.
Yeah.
So I had a question about what you were just talking about. So if these kids are coming to the platform, I mean, they don't need to learn RPG, COBOL. They can bring their own knowledge. So
yeah.
So basically, you were talking about a little bit of this question before. So I need to ask it anyway, because I want to see if it's possible to understand a little bit more. What are the open source languages that we can bring to the platform? How I noticed that you were on an interview with Giz, and he was talking a little bit about that. Is it possible for you to bring a little some of that conversation that you had with him in terms of what languages can we work with? How do we bring open source, or what's going on the open source inside the IBMI?
I think you might have meant Jesse.
Yeah, sorry, Jesse.
Jesse.
I said Giz, sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, well, I mean, okay, so obviously the open source languages that are there are what I would call the common open source languages. The first of those, of course, was PHP, which is sort of one of the big original ones, and sorry, of course, Java as well. And Perl has been there actually for quite a while. We also now have the big ones like Python and Node.js, which are sort of the two flavors du jour at the moment, you know.
Yeah.
But to me, what the key thing is that what IBM are doing on open source really is that they've sort of pretty much laid down a marker. I think that in whatever the du jour, as I said, language is going to be, it's going to be available on IBMI. In other words, they've just kicked it open and sort of said, that's it. You want open source? We're doing open source.
Okay.
Yeah? So the new language that comes along in 6 months, and there's always going to be a new one in 6 months, right?
Okay.
And they're going to go, it's going to be there. So if that's what you're going to go with, IBM are going to provide it. But I think an important thing to remember is, I mean, that, as I say, is really more a hook to get people in.
Yeah.
The key thing on IBMI is that RPG and COBOL are still your two core business languages. And I think what the conclusion, I mean, as everybody starts on modernization, and one of the big traps we fall into as software developers is we're always looking for the golden bullet. And this is especially true with programming languages. We look for this thing of going, here's the language that does everything. You know, yeah. I mean, you know, this was the great promise of Java. Right? I mean, it was going to, I mean, it was going to be doing your payroll, and it was going to be running your refrigerator. You know, I mean, it was just going to be fantastic. Of course, this is, I mean, as anybody who works in software development, when you stop and think about it, total fallacy. It's never going to happen. Okay. Yeah. Languages are tools, nothing else. And I think when you ask, when you ask young developers coming to the platform, when you ask them about the programming languages they do, and if you ask them, you know, what's your favorite language? They kind of look at you as if you're a weirdo. You know, I mean, it's you know, it's like turning around to a carpenter and saying, you know, so which is your favorite hammer? You know, they go, well, you know, I feel a little bit comfortable with this one because I hammer with it a lot. You know, but
depend on the use.
Yeah. You know, I mean, but they would turn to you and go, and then you ask them. It's like, you know, when you get into it, you start saying, you know, well, which hammer do you like to use to saw wood? they go, well, I don't use a hammer. I use a saw. I use a different tool.
Yeah.
And this becomes the key thing. It's a thing that when you get to a language like RPG or COBOL, these are business languages. Their purpose is to manipulate database and apply business rules.
Okay.
That's what they're great at. When it comes to, can I do a web interface, using RPG? Yep, I can. There's a thing out there, CGI Dev 2, for doing it. Would that be my favorite thing to use? Nope, there are better tools.
Okay.
So it's like the comparison, to do that tool comparison, I sort of say, like RPG, it could be like a handsaw for doing web.
Yeah.
But I got this power saw and this jigsaw over here that I could use instead that would be much better and much quicker. So in that case, I will use those. When it comes to the hardcore business stuff, RPG is the power tool for that, or COBOL is the power tool for that. So as part of modernization, what we look at is multiple languages, multiple tools, and it can become a thing. If you're a good programmer, well, then picking up modern RPG, that's as easy as learning PHP or Java or anything else. RPG is now just another programming language.
Okay.
So with that, and just becomes the thing of, am I going to bother to learn how to use it, or is my skill going to be at the front end? Yeah, and just doing that, or do I want to get into the business logic bit? If that's your forte, well, then RPG is the language you learn for that.
So, okay. So basically the toolkit is key in order to move. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
That's a very clear concept. I mean, I love the analogy because it makes it understand that, I can be a camperter just with a hammer. It won't work. Or I will be able to do just one thing. And then I need more camperters to do other things, which, okay, now it makes more sense. So let me ask, in terms of what we can do with the IBMI, and something that you just mentioned. I mean, there's a lot of companies running, and they're still running all RPG code or RPG code. How do we move these to the web? So how do we move from a green screen to my cell phone? What are the tools that we can? I'm not asking for brands, no. I mean, I'm asking for something more general.
Yeah, I mean it's a challenge. I mean, and there are lots of tools out there to do it. I mean, like Fresh have a couple of them. I mean, a couple of the big ones on the market are from Fresh, and there are 2 or 3 other ones out there. And I mean, I find it an interesting thing that most of the companies who are working in that area, as Fresh did, and like when they started out, their tools were primarily screen scrapers.
Yeah.
They started out as, give us your green screen and we will re-represent it as looking like something better. Actually, I remember chatting with Nick Hampson, who look, I mean, you know Nick, and I remember complaining to him about this once, and I sort of said, all you guys are really doing is slapping lipstick on a pig. I mean, that's basically what you're doing. And Nick looked at me and he sort of said, he said, that's true. He said, but you have to admit, he said, every now and again we can end up with a very good-looking pig. So it's not that I have a complaint about that, but the interesting thing that I find is the way that all of these tools, or like over the last 10 to 15 years, now they're not tools that just allow you to, re-represent your green screen. They are actually modernization tools. So they will help you take something and sort of say, well, look, we'll help you take that monolithic program that you have, that you've been running for the last 30 years in some cases, God help us, with that, and we'll help you take the good bits out of it, that are the business logic, put them in a wrapper, and now we'll allow you to redo your front end using PHP or Java or anything you want out there, right? And they will help you to sort of take the thing that was built using nothing but a hammer and sort of say, well, now let's put all the power tools to use here and end up with something that's 10 times better. So to me, like when people ask me about the thing of tooling, I never have recommendations because I really, really don't care. The only thing that to me that's important is that companies modernize. Any approach they take, any of the great resources that are out there, I really don't care as long as they use one of them, right? And fine, if they're also like one of the big enormous companies like the banks and things like that have their hordes of staff there, fine. I mean, they have a homegrown application and they want to rewrite it all themselves, fine. Go and do it. Just do something. Do anything. Stop sitting still on a green screen going, well, maybe tomorrow somebody will give me a magic wand. You know, it's not going to happen. They just have to move.
Okay, but in the idea of moving, they have the option, instead of rewriting, they have the option of modernizing and still having the core, the existing core that they were using for 30 years, even though they can still see it on a cell phone.
Yeah, they can. So when you look at modern applications, and regardless of the methodology you use, like whether you're using like a MVC or system objects or whatever design methodology you go for, all of them are actually just different ways of implementing the same thing, which is a tiered technology. So that you separate your database from your business logic from your interface. And the theory being you can change any one of those components without affecting the others. Or if you have a new component, as we had a few years ago when people had modernized for the web. And this is, I thought, was great, because this is when they realized how well this architecture works. And then mobile came along. Yeah. Well, the thing was, you just said, well, I just design a mobile interface. I'm still using the same business logic at the back. It's just a different front end.
Yeah.
Or there's one client that I've dealt with in Sweden. It was great. They started down a road where they started doing their front end using one language, got so far into it and went, this is much more complicated than we thought. Let's switch over to this other one instead. Okay, nothing on the back end being rewritten. It's
different layers.
Yeah, it's a layer thing. And so regardless of which way you go, as long as you hold to that thought that everything is separate components, well, then it becomes a simple thing. You're saying with the RPG bit, if you look at the monolithic programs that are there at the moment, the bulk of those have logic for printing, they have logic for handling green screen, you know, for I/O. You're saying, get rid of that. What's left? Well, what's left is my business logic. And then you say, how do I take that and wrap it so it's callable? And that can be like, you know, as a web service. It can be, you know, called directly from PHP or Java, however you want to do it. But as I say, the methodology is irrelevant. And if you design that backend well, you can actually plug it into anything. So, I mean, you can start off and going, well, everything is called via stored procedures. For example, SQL stored procedures. Somebody comes along in 2 months' time and says, oh, well, I want to call that using REST as a REST service. To which my answer would be, well, go ahead. Call it. It's there. It's already ready for it.
It's ready to use.
It's ready to use.
Okay. Okay, great. So we have a company, let's say this is a situation, no? We have a company running all applications in all hardware. What's the process that they will have? I mean, is it something they will have a lot of complication to move to a newer platform, let's say either Power System 8 or 9, on a newer operating system? That software, that application that they have, it will have to be rewritten, or is something that they can use?
Okay, so you've now touched on what is the great thing about this platform and what is also the curse of this platform, right? It's also the worst thing about it, 2 in 1. Okay, so the thing is that when you move to new hardware on IBM i, generally what you have to do is nothing. You just restore everything and run. There's nothing to do, okay? This is the great thing about the platform, is that you are always forward compatible. So I think there have been just 2 releases on the platform where IBM said, you know, under certain circumstances, you might have to recompile your programs. Now please note, might. Okay, for the bulk of people, all they had to do was nothing. It's an interesting thing, by the way. I have a library with some programs in it that I wrote on a System 38 in 1979.
Okay.
Okay. I can restore that onto any IBM i today, including Power 9, and those programs run perfectly. I don't have to do anything.
Okay. So
Okay.
I guess that answered a little bit, but you still have another section of the.
Okay, so this is also the curse of the
Yeah.
platform. I have programs that I wrote in 1979 that run perfectly on the platform today. So why would I touch the code? I mean, so there's this dreadful phrase that we have in the industry at the moment, which is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Now, I would turn around and say, well, if I've got a program I wrote in 1979, it's broken. I should be fixing it. The platform allows me to go, no, I don't have to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a little thing that on other platforms where people have been constantly forced to modernize because the architecture of the operating system says, yeah, you know, the way you were doing that, it doesn't work anymore. You have to rewrite it. IBM on this platform turned around and sort of said, no, it'll keep working.
Okay, but the market will force you to modernize it, though.
Yeah, but now it just becomes a business reason as to why I modernize.
Okay.
And the business reason is green screen doesn't cut it anymore.
Yeah.
Right? It has, you know, there are better interfaces that make my business better. That's my reason for modernizing. The difficulty I have is now that we've got a big gap, that people are looking at like 30-year code, you know, code that was written 30 years ago. I mean, if you compare RPG of 30 years ago to RPG now, I mean, I do have this on a slide, by the way, where I show a thing, people, like it's 15 lines of code in old RPG. It's 7 lines of code in new RPG. You know, oh, and by the way, the 7 lines is legible. You know, the other code, no, you really had to know what you were doing,
okay,
to understand it. So it's, you know, and the unfortunate thing is there are still developers and their thought process is the thought process of 30 years ago. So it becomes the thing, we talk about the thing of like, well, do you have 30 years experience on the platform? Or do you have 1 year's experience that you've repeated 30 times?
okay.
You know, that you've just keep repeating that every year going on. And that is the curse of not being forced to change your software by IBM.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the great thing from a business point of view is that, I mean, so when you take it, like when the first power systems came out, I mean, I remember there was a thing, IBM were getting maintenance calls from people because they were saying, oh, some of our batch stuff isn't running anymore. And IBM said, what do you mean? Well, actually, no, it was just that it was now running so fast, they weren't catching it in time. So they would submit it. It would, by the time they would key in the command to go and, well, see where it was, it had finished. You know, before it used to be a 10-minute process. New hardware, it's 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they get you, so you immediately get the benefit without having to do anything, which is nice.
It is.
But it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
You know, and now companies are realizing that cost because they go to modernize. It's a bigger job than it would have been 10 years ago or 15 years ago if they, you know, if they had sort of taken on a phased pattern to doing it.
Okay.
But we are where we are.
I have another question, which also relates to some interviews that you have. One with Alison Botterill, another interview with Pascal Polverini, which is related to Watson, artificial intelligence. Yeah, it was an interview from July last year, I believe.
Okay.
And it's something that since I started getting into the IBM world, I realized, and different conversations with Trevor and other people, I realized that this is something quite interesting. I mean, data science, machine learning. I mean, what are the things that we can do? So this is the question I have for you. I mean, where is the IBM platform related to artificial intelligence? I mean, how can we implement it? Okay,
so yeah, well, the first thing is I think this is the great, exciting new world. You know, and to me, this is another sort of landmark in computing, not just on IBM in the whole computing area. So what we're looking at, and I think what Watson was the first glimpse of, is well, it's somebody said it's one of two things. It's either the start of the computer on Star Trek, or it's the start of the computer Skynet and Terminator. One of the two. I mean, whichever way you want to go. Your benevolent artificial intelligence, or humans are an infection on the earth, artificial intelligence. But it really is the start of that. I mean, so we're clear on that. We're now at stage one of that. All this stuff we see in the science fiction movies and everything, and our, talking to our computer and everything. So the thing then becomes of, when we start looking at that, about how do you leverage that for our ongoing businesses? Well, I think this really is an area where it depends on the business. And I really think it's a thing of where you're always looking at new things. So sort of the question, and because it's a question I've sort of been throwing around for quite a while, and I've started to realize it's kind of an invalid question. And what I mean by that is, where everybody is looking for is, they're saying, it's the thing, how do I integrate Watson with my payroll system? And if you think about that, you sort of go, well, you don't. I mean, Watson has nothing to offer your payroll. Right?
But it's another tool.
Yeah, it's another tool. Now, I look at things though, and I sort of say, well, okay, forget about payroll. How would I leverage Watson with something like human resources?
Yeah.
Well, now we start to open it up. Okay, so you look at some of the AI stuff that's in there on empathy, of actually doing analysis on people. You look at the fact that Watson can go and look at your Facebook account, your LinkedIn account, your Twitter account, your Instagram account. It can look at what you do, right? So a needless thing for companies. So you think you're the staid old bank, like we're all harumph bank, yeah. Actually we're still believing that this interweb thing may not catch on. You know what I mean? Like, that stage, right? Well, do I want to employ the guy who goes on Instagram putting up his party pictures every weekend of him, guzzling barrels of beer and everything like that? Is that the guy that we want in our company? Like, Watson can tell me that immediately. So, I mean, there are loads of areas that it opens up in. When you look at things they're doing with insurance, where they're connecting Watson to drones to look at storm damage. And it's not that it's just, we have a drone and it's taking pictures, and then somebody looks at the pictures. Watson looks at the pictures. Yeah. Now, the beauty of this is that for us to connect to that, Watson's a web service. You consume a web service. It's nothing else. And I can consume that any way I want. I mean, in other words, I say, take this bunch of data, send it to Watson. Watson gives me back the answer. Thank you. Okay, it's the simplest thing. There's actually an article I wrote on this about 2-3 years ago, which was RPG talks to Watson. And I did it for language translation. And I hate to admit it, I actually did it on a green screen. But I did it on green screen to prove a point, that this isn't web technology, right? And I did language translation. Yeah, and so I mean, I give a presentation on this. I show this, and I said, like, think of it. If somebody, sometime 5 years ago, somebody had said, I'll show you language translation on a green screen, you would have called them insane, right? It's 2 lines of code.
Is it possible to share that link after about what you wrote?
Oh yeah, sure. It's out there. It's on IT Jungle. If you just Google RPG talks to Watson, you'll find it.
Perfect.
It's there.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so this is for me. I mean, this is the area that I'm more interested in. I really like it, and I like it the way that you presented it, to the way that how Watson can interact in different things, and it is a tool. It's not that we can integrate Watson in everything or artificial intelligence in everything. It's depending on what do we want to integrate it with. But another thing that you just mentioned is the way that we ask, which is key. I mean, no, it doesn't do anything in our billing system, but it can do something different in the human resources department. Okay.
Yeah. I think I should just add to that. I mean, I think, and I think this to me is the bit that I think is the exciting bit. It's going to be seeing what people come up with. But I think the real thing is that you have to go beyond just the AI bit. Right, the AI is just going to be, the interesting thing that I know is that a lot of the work now on AI actually has been around for a long time. In other words, the math behind it has been there since the 50s, 60s. It's just there was never a machine fast enough to do it, right?
Okay.
So now there's the machine is fast enough to do it. Great, they're applying the math. It's brilliant to see, and they're discovering new things. There's new math coming along, you know, because we had these 15 formulas, and that gave, now that we have the power, we've got 20 more. But it's when you mix something like AI with things like big data,
Yeah.
you know, and that's where it goes. So you got to move outside just the AI bit. You got to take in, okay, IBM are using that dreadful term cognitive, which I hate, by the way, but just me personally. But it's that whole mixture of things. So you take it that, you know, I've got this data that's relative just to my business. And now when I do analysis with information that's readily available out on the internet, and I merge those two and I can see how it affects my business. There's a great one Alison talks about, which is with beauty products, you know, skincare creams and all of this. In Japan, there's sort of a chain of stores, and they have Watson linked to the Weather Channel, right? And it's now predicting what the weather is going to be in areas, and like, oh, it's going to be very dry for 2 weeks. So it's automatically to the stores in that area, it sends out product to make sure they don't run out of certain creams that people need for dry skin. You know, I mean, you start to think about that and sort of go, oh, well, if I know it's going to rain a lot in a certain area, I'll ship umbrellas to my stores because people are going to be buying umbrellas.
Yeah.
You know, and it's Watson making these decisions. So it's that mixture of doing data analysis and also then having the smarts to go, well, what do you do with the data? That's the AI bit being applied to it. Okay.
Okay.
And that's me. It's just the cleverness of people with these things they're coming up with. Yeah.
Okay. So data science is a good, I guess, a good path. Again, I mean, just keep in mind that the reason why I'm doing these interviews is for me to learn where to go, how to get in, and data science is one of the things that is I'm finding really interesting. So one thing is AI, another thing is how we understand this data to use it with AI.
Yeah.
So, okay. So thank you so much. I mean, I'm just putting a mark on my data science.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm biased now towards that. So let me ask you one thing about the community. I mean, I know that you participate, you're an award-winning speaker at different events. What are the different communities that you're participating for the IBMI platform?
Oh, well, for IBMI, so let's see. Well, for many years, I used to work with Common in the US. So I was a subject matter expert with them, and then I worked on the strategic education team. It was a little bit odd because I was and always have been based in Ireland. I never actually lived in the States or that.
Okay.
I used to commute every morning, backwards and forwards from Dublin to no.
I hope you had a good book.
So I worked with Common for many years. I spoke at the Common conferences. I talk a lot at user groups. I've spoken, you know, like I've been in South Africa, I've been in Australia, Central America, user groups throughout the States. But basically anyone who wants me to come and speak and is willing to pay a small fee, I will gladly go and speak for them. I work on with Common Europe. So I'm on what's known as the CIAC, which is the Common European Advisory Council. And there's an equivalent of this in the US, which is the CAC, which is the Common Advisory Council. And we're sort of a sounding board that IBM use. So, and actually I just had a call earlier this afternoon. We had a conference call on it. So, so we work with sometimes people will come, well, if I'm chatting with you might sort of tell me, I've one of the things I always hated about the system was that you couldn't do X. And I might sort of go, hey, that's a good idea. I'll bring it to IBM. I'll champion it for you with IBM and say, I'm lending my weight behind this as being a good thing. And the nice thing about something like the Common Advisory Councils is that IBM has to answer us. Okay, that's the deal they make with us. In other words, they have to give us a reason. I mean, they can come back and go, no, that's a rubbish idea, right? So if you put this up on something like this, the request for enhancement websites that are out there that IBM have, you might put that up there and IBM can just reply to you and go, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. And that's it, right? with
at least
us,
there's
with us,
interaction.
they have to explain why. The other thing that IBM uses for is they say, well, you know, this is what we're going to be doing on future releases. What do you think? You know, so they will run things by us. They'll ask our opinion, which is, you know, quite nice. Does my ego a lot of good. I must admit, when Steve Will says to me, well, what do you think about this? You know, it's kind of nice. So, I work with that. Of course, the other big thing I'm involved in is the system I developer. So this is a partnership I have. I'm in with John Paris and Susan Gantner, who are ex-IBMers and that, but now for the last 12 years, we've been running the RPG and DB2 Summit, which is a developers conference, and that runs twice a year. And that, like I said, one just finished last week in Chicago. And our next one will be in the spring in Charlotte. So we do sort of spring and fall every year. And we've now done 24 of them, and I'm not feeling in the least bit old. I'm feeling very old with that. But again, yeah. And on top of that, then I write, and the interviews, as you mentioned, the I Talk with Tuohy interviews that I do with IBM on IBM Systems Magazine's website. So I've always been involved with community. It's a big part of the industry, and I think the more that you get into it, it's not just actually that it's community; it's good community. So I remember for about 4 years, I was using a Linux desktop as my primary sort of desktop for all my stuff. And that of course means that you go in on the Linux boards a lot, because on Linux there are always things that have to be fixed, you know. And it scared the life out of me, because what I'm used to is a really helpful community, you know, with very few exceptions of where people get angry on on message boards or anything like that. You know, so I mean, you go on a Linux board and you ask a question, and you know, first reply is, well, what kind of stupid question is that? You know, I mean, obviously, did you even bother to look this up? You know, it will be the way they reply. You know, you just don't get that in our community, right? And it's it's one of the things. You know, I went to one of the our champion things a couple of years ago, one of the meetings, and you know, a couple of the IBMers who are like much higher up the tier from Alison, and that, like Alison's boss's boss or something like that. I was just chatting with him over coffee, and he was sort of saying to me, sort of says, you know, it amazes them, the IBMI community, how close it is, you know, and how forceful it is, as you know, it's nearly an entity in its own right, you know, and at times it moves like that, you know. I mean, it really is strange. I mean, compared to other IT communities. Now, again, I don't have a lot of experience of the other ones. When I say I've dabbled in and out of them, and now and again, because of stuff I do with clients, I'll go looking things up in other places, and I'm just sort of going, my God, I would hate to have to put up with this every day, you know. It's just an industry. Our industry is just full of nice people. That's all I can say.
And as well.
Oh, sorry, nice people and Trevor.
But Dani, the reason that we're even here is simply because of community. I mean, this is how Paul and I connected. This is how we've connected to everybody. And it really is a very tight-knit community. You know, and everybody does get along no matter how much we tease each other, but we have something in common. And it's really been a great thing for our community. And it's sort of the way we encourage people like yourself to come join. And the hard part is it's a community that's mostly in person too. There's only recently been a lot of that online, but it's mostly in person, you know?
So I guess, I mean, this is a good point for my research. No, it's not only knowing about the IBMI, it goes hand by hand, being part of the community in order to be able to be part of the IBMI platform, and whatever you learn, then you share, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's sorry, that's sort of kind of yes and no, right? Because the weird thing about this is that when you look at open source, like the open source, you go down GitHub, for example, there's very little RPG stuff out there. Yeah. And it really is strange. And it's not that people aren't willing to share. I mean, actually, I'd be one of the greatest culprits for this. I have nothing on GitHub. I should have loads. I mean, I have loads of stuff that, I mean, on our own System I Developer website, I've got like 4 or 5 things I've done up there. and they've always been on the website. I'm just too lazy to go and put them on GitHub. You know, just a bit. You want them? Grab them off my website.
Now this is public. You're gonna have to do something about it. I mean, it's gonna be live very soon.
Hey, look, I'll send you the stuff. You feel free to put it up on GitHub, Danny. Okay. You know, but it's, you know, so it's a strange thing. I mean, it's a thing we share. But it's a strange thing. We never did it through, we just don't do it through the tools that are out there for open source that everybody uses for sharing. Now, people like Liam, who you mentioned, he's trying very hard to get us to do it. You know, he prods me every now and again going, when are you going to put something up? When are you going to, you know, at that? And I will, I promise at some stage I will. But yes, it's a sharing community, but I think you just got to watch that. Not in the way that you know, if you're coming from an open source community, you know, I mean, if you're coming like, oh, I'm a Ruby on Rails guy or I'm a Python guy, you're not going to find this wealth of information out there through the normal open source channels.
Okay.
You know, and a lot of this really has to do again with the age of the platform. You got to remember, like, it dates from before the internet. Right. Yeah. So most of us did things by writing articles, by doing it through publications. Oh, and I'll make the, you know, here's the source. It's up on my website. You know, feel free to download it. It's more the way that people like I have always worked on the platform. So, so yeah, but still, it's as a, I put it this, I wish a lot of the open source communities were as friendly as the IBMI one is.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
But I can tell you this too. Paul is one of the few people that are well known in the industry. And if you ask Paul, if you just email him or if you get in touch with him, he'll always give you stuff. He'll always answer you stuff and he'll always share stuff. So sort of alleviated the need to have it posted because, you know, Paul is very open to helping the community that way. So he does that automatically. It's just a normal thing. So there's not a real lot of pressure for Paul to go and post all of that stuff. But apparently we're applying it today, right, Danny?
Yeah. Okay, so I have one last question, which can be translated into two maybe, but the whole idea is, okay, I work for a company and my main task that I have is, right now I'm a developer, not open source code. This is more related to other needs that the company has, but I'm in the point that I want to jump in to the platform. But I noticed that you were mentioning different areas. I mean, we have very different and well-differentiated areas in the platform. And it's a little bit complicated, the question, but how do I jump in? I mean, what are the different options that I have? And even connected with the other question that I have, which is, and what's coming? No, that can be something that I can jump in as well.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if the question is clear.
Yeah, no, I understand, but again, it's one of these. It's an enormous question, right? I mean, or, you know, it's. So the where to even begin with it? So where I always say to people, like where you jump in is into something that interests you, right? And I think the thing is that to me, the great developers to me are the people who know how to do skunk work. So in other words, great developers are people who know how to play. And what that means is that, before we were talking about languages as tools, well, I think to a developer, what you look at it is, you look at it as, well, languages are toys. And I'm going to play with it. Yeah. And when I play with it, I'm going to see if I like playing with that toy. Yeah?
Okay.
And then if I like that toy, well, I'll play with it more and I'll see what else I can do. But at some stage, I'm always going to play with my other toys. So it's really like that kid with your toy box. You have your favorite toys that you like to play with and that you like to do things with. But every now and again, you get a little bit bored with those toys and you'll go back to the ones that you don't play with all that much, right? And then, of course, it's your birthday and it's Christmas and people give you new toys. So you're going to play with those at the start and then, you know, they fit in. Maybe this one will become my new favorite toy. Right? And that's really what, that to me is sort of the knack that you have to develop. So when all of these new open source things come out on the platform, that's what I do. I go and I play with them. I'll start with my hello world, you know, and then I'll move up to, oh, well, how would I maintain a database with this? Like, what's involved in that? What cool stuff can I do on a web page with it? Yeah. And they're all small little snippets. I don't go for production level code. I play, right? And so, like, I find it interesting. Just the summit last week, I mean, I was chatting with like John Paris, and he was saying to me, you know, oh, how much he likes Python, you know, and I'm sort of going to him, I hate it. I really dislike it. Toys. That's all it is. So you're looking at two, you know, fairly experienced developers here, and it's just, you know, personal thing. I mean, I see the benefits of Python. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad language. I'm just saying personally, you know, wouldn't be my favorite toy. Yeah.
So it won't be the area where you jump in, basically.
It wouldn't be the one where I would jump in, right?
Yeah.
But I went and played with it. Okay, I'm not doing it just based on, well, something I read or I had a quick look. You know, I went, I dirtied my hands. And this is the thing, that if you're a programmer, well, that's how you know. You go and you write code in that language. Now I know. Yeah? Is it for me if it isn't? If it isn't for me,
No.
it's the thing, right? And I think that's the thing. You just have to constantly keep that playtime. I tell people this many years ago, a company I worked with, that's what I did with the developers who were working for me. I used to give them a day every week, and it was playtime. And what I told them was, you can't work on anything that has to do with what we're developing. It has to be something completely outside.
Okay.
And I didn't expect anything from them. But I wasn't sort of telling them, oh, and you know, and it's something that, you know, that oh, I want you to research this area because we're thinking of moving into that, or we might not. I just wanted them to go and play. And if something came out of it, great. That was an added bonus, but it's not what I wanted. I mean, playtime is what developed them.
Yeah.
And if they're good developers, that will swing back into whatever they do, whatever program they write. Okay, so they might be doing something in Node.js. Well, that triggers something and gives them a better way of doing something in RPG.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I don't care. So, I mean, it's just a thing of knowledge is power. The more knowledgeable your developers are, the better developers they are. So it becomes a play thing. And that's what I say to any developer. You got to make, it's your career, make time to play. You know, if your company doesn't give it, well, fine, you do it on a Saturday. You know, and you know, and while you're looking for a new job, you know, if you don't get the playtime from your company, maybe it's the wrong company to be working for.
But I like the concept. I love the concept, actually.
Mm.
So I guess I don't have more questions. I mean, I thank you so much for your time, and I need to watch again this interview because I'm taking a lot of things from what you said and your perspective from those questions, and then I need to take notes so I can be ready for the next interview. But I love the way that you were presenting the things as different tools, different toys, and out of that creating a toolbox and doing something with it, which that's basically what I love. So once again, Paul, thank you so much. Trevor, thank you very much.
So Dani, I got to say thanks. And by the way, you did a good interview. I was really relaxed with this. I'm not nervous anymore.
Thank you very much.
I'm thinking taking this up as a career, just answering questions. Could I go on a chat show circuit somewhere?
Trevor is a gentleman for that.
I do have one serious question about this. Dani and I have been talking, obviously, about some of this and his approach, and he's looking into data science and even doing a certificate in data science. And so what I suggested to him was that if he did this and IBMI, he could be our first IBMI data scientist. So we've given him a challenge that he should be the first guy, right?
Yep.
Perfect. I love it. And we can have the same conversation again as soon as I'm ready to see where we're going from here.
Yep. So you got to watch this, Dani. I mean, you go and do that, and I'll reverse it. I'll do an interview with you. Okay.
I would love that. I would love that.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys, and we'll sign off now. And I will post this very, very quickly. Thanks, guys.